Welcome back to the metal shop, and this is my sophisticated drawing for what I'm about to build. I need a sidebar or a side table in my leather shop. I find my table getting crowded with tools, and this is my sidebar. I'm going to crowd this with tools and leave my big work surface free and clear to lay out fabric and leather. And now here you see me setting up a fixture on my strong hand fixture table. That is the size of the 3 levels I'm going to need. 2 will be the lower shelves and 1 will be the top. And these frames are going to define the depth and the width. And people always wonder why I like to grind, because it's easier to bring this small tool to the work than to bring the work to a big giant bandsaw. Don't get me wrong, I use that quite often. But in this case, whenever I make face frames, I like to just knock them out right in place on the table so I can quickly make sure they fit. And if they don't fit, I can adjust them right away. And I always use a big 6-inch cut-off wheel. Various brands, it doesn't really matter, whatever's available. And here you see me fitting it up, making sure it fits in the fixtured measured spaces. And once I know that it fits, I tack it. Now I'm not going to weld the sharp corners because you're going to see why in a few minutes. They're going to mostly get cut out completely. And now here I'm tacking it up. I jump around a little bit before I weld it completely. Now I'm going to put a little weld on each one of the joints on the back. And as I said, I'm going to cut most of that corner off, but it will get welded again. And that's the first frame. And now here you see me doing partway into the second frame, do a little bit of grinding. And then, of course, the third frame. And that's why you want the fixture table, because each one of those is going to fit inside your fixtured area. They're going to be exactly the same, which is important in this case for some continuity. And now this is what I was talking about. I don't need to weld that sharp corner because it's going to get cut out. And in this case, that's our upright. This is all 1.5-inch angle iron, 1/4 inch thick. It's a little too thick for this project, but it was what they had available for the cash and carry section. I didn't want to wait and get 24-foot pieces. And there you see, I got rid of the corner because the upright, or the leg, is going to take its place. And to get a nice, straight, continuous line from the bottom all the way to the tabletop, I want those legs to be one full piece. I don't want to cut them and stagger them in between the levels. That just wouldn't be the smart thing to do. And now here you could see the empty space available for that when it gets welded in place, but I need to set up the fixture table again. Now I also need my leg. I just showed you sample pieces in that video. So here, these are the actual legs. I taped them together so they're all the exact same length. And now here you see my bottom 2 stages layered up in the fixture table. And that piece is slipped into those 2 empty corners. And I weld it in place. And I'm tacking it. I'm not driving them home all the way because I don't want them to pull and shape the welds. I don't want them to pull and tug and make things go out of square. And so you notice I just toggled up to the next corner. I'm using the end of the table as my fixture instead of laying out the entire thing, because each one of the 4 corners has to come to me in this direction. So I just left the fixturing up right there. And I just loosen it and flip it, and then loosen it and flip it. Everything gets tacked, and then off camera I weld it all the way. And that big giant piece right there is a big right angle. It comes with the strong hand fixturing table. And this is my last leg, and you watch it just slip it right into that negative space that's there. And the short side, right where the clamps were just removed, is going to become the bottom, just like that. And now I'm going to weld the top on. Here I flip it back over. And so now the top is face down against the fixturing table. And I tack weld each one of those corners and make sure everything's lined up. And because I fixtured everything lines up absolutely perfectly. Now this detail is really just to divide it in the middle and to create 4 quadrants, which is in a loose way 4 sections for the under storage. But also I just like the busy detail, which is why I added it. It lends itself to that vintage look that I've been going for on this whole project. Now here it is. This is the basic framework. And now it's time to make my gussets. These gussets are what's going to make it look 1940s industrial. And for that I have to take it over to the Fastcut. I'm going to plasma cut out a couple of shapes, and I draw my shapes in Illustrator, That's my main drawing program. And in Illustrator, I bring it into SheetCam, and then in SheetCam, I turn it into a cut path for the Fastcut. And here you see this is 10 gauge. I got this at the drop room at Albany Steel, and the cuts are coming out nice. And this is a dry table. I have a big fan that sucks the smoke out. But I need several of these pieces. Each corner, wherever it intersects with a horizontal and a vertical, is going to get one of these pieces. And I take it over to my bender. I have this antique, vintage, motorized three-phase bender. This thing is probably about 40, 50 years old. And it can bend up to 10 gauge across 8 feet, maybe even more. You can bend 1/4 inch on this thing in short pieces. And it's electric. And I'm using the switch here on my thumb, which you'll see right here. I'm able to push a button to coax it up, and there's a couple of stopping points, which you can see just there in the lower right portion. And then I'm able to take a nice 90-degree bend on that. And my buddy Ryan's there, and we're just talking about it. And here you can see a wider image of what's going on. And I marked the center of each one of the pieces. This is a great machine. I don't use it as much as I should. I have to come up with more projects for this machine, but it is unbelievable. There you can get a good look. And you see me tapping the button, just taking it just a tiny bit past 90. And now here it is applied to the design. And I was inspired by something that I think I saw at an antique shop, but this is a style you see Restoration Hardware mimic, and a few other places mimic this for years. It's just a cool look. Anything vintage and old is cool. These gussets really don't provide a lot of strength with the welding and the size of this steel. This is certainly a redundancy, but it looks good, and that's really what I was going for. And some of these bent a little too tight. Sometimes they're bent a little open, but by clamping them in place and then throwing a weld in place, it's not going anywhere. Now this is just preparation for the next step, which is me drilling a bunch of holes and putting rivets in. There's a little bit of a design decision to have these braces face down with the middle pointing down, as you see here and there, and then at the very bottom pointing up. So you'll notice they point down until you get to the bottom, and then they turn over and point up. That's just a design decision that I made. And now I'm popping holes in everything. This is about a 1/4 inch hole drilled at two per each end. And it certainly took some time. Now these rivets I get at Tractor Supply, and they were a touch long, so I took them over to the bandsaw and cut off about a 1/4 inch. And I could have taken the time to heat them up and bend them over in the back, just like they should have been done if this was only riveted. But considering how much weld is on this, this is certainly good enough to just throw a little tack behind each one of these rivet heads. And now the table's going to have a backsplash, so the tools and the bottles and supplies that I put up against the edge on the top counter won't fall off the back. And so of course I put my branding in it. This is a piece of 1x5 that I bought on the cash and carry rack at Albany. They were only 5 feet long. I bought 2 of them. Considering this table is 5 feet long, I have to weld 3 pieces together. If I had a long enough piece, I could have just bent it at the bender like I did with the other stuff. And now on the AmeriBrade, I clean up my cut. You'll notice there I was able to use a 6-inch cutting disc to make a nice curve like I did. And this fixture table is so dreamy. You can see here having the fixtured ends so that I'm square to the tabletop, and then the deep ends, the deep sides, I'm able to clamp right onto the sides, right onto my material that hangs over the edge. And that's the one side, and now I prepare and I'm going to weld on the other side. This is one of those moments where I was done welding and I asked myself, did I put that on correctly? I really hope so. And then as I pulled it up, I was able to see that I did do it correctly. I didn't have to do it off camera a second time. Both scallops curve down like they should. And there you see it. And now you can see more rivets in place, and now I'm going to weld the backsplash in place. Just a few tacks keeps it where it needs to live. And here you can get a better look at the branding. And whenever I do this, I try and keep a consistent number of tacks. If I'm going to start at each end in the middle and then work my way out in the middle of those parts and then the middle of those parts. And so here you see it. These rivets really turn me on. They're really getting a good response from my friends and fans on Instagram who saw the pictures of it. And then these rinky-dink wheels. I was trying to find smallish vintage wheels, and the best I could find were these little bronze wheels, which might not last, but if they don't last, I'll just break them off or cut them off and just have it live on its legs. But having the wheels in the leather shop for me, I know will be convenient. Rob's just helped me get it off the table. It turned out to be considerably heavy because all those angle irons are 1/4 inch. And that was just what they had at the time. It really should be 1/8 inch, but it's fine. The heavier these tables are, the more sturdy they feel and the sturdier they are. Just giving it a little spritz with black paint. In time, the black paint's going to wear off on the edges, and I think that's going to look nice. Now we need to put the wood in place. I take the ShopBot CNC and I cut out 2 pieces. And now this is a piece from the local Home Depot. This is a solid birch butcher block. The butcher block was about $150. All in, this project cost me about $500 to make, considering the amount of steel, the casters, and the wood. It's a lot. When people want custom furniture, they complain that it's too expensive. This is the reason why. Materials are expensive. And of course I let my track saw out, so I don't have it, so I improvised. Just as well, it worked just as good. And of course, gleam for the win, total boat. And then this cutting surface, this butcher block needs to be painted on both sides, don't forget. It's going to soak up moisture from the side that isn't painted and it'll cup. So it's important to paint both sides of that type of butcher block. And it says it right on the instructions too. And now here it is, the butcher block's going in place. That's after 2 coats. And I just bang it down. Some of the welds gave it a little bit of a swelling spot, but that's fine. It's because now you bang it in, it's going to have to be banged out. So it's not going to topple out. And here it is. Rob and Dave helped me carry it up to the shop. And I was able to get it filled with some tools already. And you'll see that in just a second. But it is nice having something this heavy on wheels. All in, this thing probably weighs about 150 pounds. Really, really proud of this design, this build. And here it is in place in the leather shop. And there you see it's my side table. I'm able to keep all my tools and my bits and bobs on there without them getting in the way of the main empty table, which is what I need. And that little chest of drawers I made about a year ago. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Lincon Electric. And find me on Patreon. Thank you, thank you, thank you.